Welcome to Empowered by AI, the podcast for women entrepreneurs ready to harness AI to take their businesses to the next level. I'm your host, Michelle Muncy Silva, founder of Innovative AI Studios. You may have left corporate life to start this entrepreneurial journey, but you don't have to go it alone. Here, you'll find a supportive community of like-minded women and an invaluable thought partner each week, as my guests and I share actionable insights you can use right away. So let's dive in together. So I really do believe that emotional resilience is a vital piece of being a female entrepreneur. And you speak so much about that and have such a fantastic perspective on that. Can you talk a little bit about how that personal experience that you've had has really shaped your creation as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the emotional resilience part for me is very much about learning how to transform a very strong, I call it my inner bully. Some people call it inner critic, inner villain. There's that sort of voice inside of you that tells you you are not enough, that tells you you're not worthy, that tells you you can't, that makes you afraid. And I had an opportunity very early on in my life. I was 12 years old when I understood what happened to me. At the age of 8, I was molested by an elderly neighbor. And he also, compromised a lot of kids in our neighborhood. And so I had a very strong message to speak up and to say enough is enough and stop the abuse. And so that was my very first roar. And I believe that a roar was gifted to me that day when I realized, understood what happened, and then spoke up. But of course, when you speak up and you're not ready to deal with the emotions that come from speaking up, in terms of, in my case, I was a 12-year-old little girl. I spoke up against this respected man in the community. He was, a church man, and it was really quite a overwhelming experience. And so the inner bully became a very strong voice inside of me that really riddled me with guilt and shame, and also just really holding me back so much to the point that I developed an eating disorder and had to deal with several addictions during my lifetime. It's really my lived curriculum and why I'm so passionate about emotional resilience, because it all starts with that conversation that we're having with ourselves and really turning that conversation that's really holding you back, that's pulling you down, that's really criticizing yourself, that's shaming and blaming and judging yourself, into a powerful inner roar. And so that you really can amplify yourself and show up in the world for who you are and really as the true authentic version of who you are.
Mm-hmm. And Marilise, can you tell us a little bit about what your acronym of ROAR stands for?
Oh, welcome. Yes. So ROAR is really a 4-step process. First of all, it's a blueprint. Okay. ROAR is a blueprint for living your best, most miraculous, dreamy life. And that really means that you lean into your authentic purpose, really finding what matters to you, what lights you up, that fire in your belly. It then talks to the emotional resilience. It talks to the inner game. It talks to the inner roar and that conversation we're having with ourselves and turning our thoughts and our feelings into a powerful inner roar. And then how do you then roar to the outside world? So it's very much then winning your outer game, your words and your actions. So having the courage then to powerfully stand in your truth, to really speak up and speak your truth. So that really is purpose, courage, and power, which are the 3 central words to the blueprint. And then the process is really how to navigate that conversation, any difficult conversation with yourself or with someone else. So ROAR stands for recognize, so catch it, observe, so that's really contain it, tame it, keep that thought, keep that emotion, because we shouldn't really push it away. We shouldn't really reject it or try and put it in a box. It's also about how you change that relationship with your emotions and your feelings. You have to feel it, right? So recognize, observe. So that's all the inner game stuff. And then assert and redirect. So the A and the R then is all about how you then reframe that conversation, how you be very assertive with yourself and with other people about the facts, about is this actually true? And really being very assertive in yourself. And not necessarily, I always say, as women in particular, we don't feel like we can assert ourselves because people would say, oh, we're aggressive or we're over emotional. But I very intentionally select the word assert because it's about you really confidently showing up in your truth. And if that means it's a no, no is a full sentence. And also, you don't always have to have an answer. Assert can also mean asking a powerful question. And yeah, and then as I say, you redirect that conversation, you reframe that conversation. And usually it's to achieve, in a relationship context with someone else, it's to achieve win outcomes.
I love that. And I feel like personally, I need to sit and stay with observe more than I do because I go right to, I think I am very reactionary as a person.
Yes.
And it comes from a place of wanting to be a doer. I want to
Yeah.
do things, right? And I wonder if that isn't true for a lot of entrepreneurial spirits. I want to do, I'm going to take action and I want this to be actionable. So I will react and act.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that O is in there, I think that's so vital. I need to learn how to do that. Do you have advice for people that go, they skip part of the process? Do you help them through that with your consulting and coaching?
Yeah. Absolutely. And the O in my 4 letters is also an I. So
Oh,
it's really
interesting.
very interesting because it's very much that sort of see yourself, see the other person, right? So it's really about seeing situations and emotions for what it is. And so it's very important, I think, that we really take that pause. You take that moment to pause. And it's actually, I do a lot of embodiment work with a coach. And she teaches me lots of powerful breathing techniques. And it's really an emotional management tool. And so the power of breath in our everyday, we breathe, we are being breathed, we are not keeping ourselves alive. So we take the breath for granted. But if you think about the breath, you breathe in and then you pause and then you breathe out. And there's a pause, there's a natural pause. And if you do that very intentionally, you realize that you let it come, you let it be, you then let it go, and you let it be again. And it's the letting it be parts which you are talking to in terms of being reactionary, because we're not consciously letting it be enough. And that's the skill that we have to learn, is letting it come, letting it be, letting it go, and then letting it be. And it's that second letting it be, it's the one that I struggle with. And especially when you do deep work, you want to move on to the next thing. We're high performers, we're high achievers. We want to tick these things off our list. You don't want to move fast. And so we don't take enough time to integrate our learnings, and we move on to the next thing. And we don't actually extract all the juice from this current experience. And that's what creates that sort of turmoil, that sort of hamster wheel feeling, especially as entrepreneurs. I very consciously work on that myself every day. It's a very easy trap to get into.
Yeah. And there's a silence that exists there that allows you to just process. I
Yes.
think we've had those moments. Your TED talk, you talk about that moment where you had a supervisor, a boss come and completely reshape your world in one sentence. This is the new direction we're going. And that gut kick feeling, I think sometimes if we can breathe through that for just that moment, there can be that silence where we can process the jumble of thoughts because inevitably that will happen, right? There will be this moment where your world shifts, and it's
Yeah.
how we get through that, I think, is that moment of self-care. It's if you
Yeah.
can just breathe as you suggested. It's not because I had someone say to me one time, I was just I didn't trust myself to speak in a moment. And the silence that I just let take me, because I was like, I can't react right. I can't react right now because nothing good will come of it. And the person I was speaking to took my silence as moving forward. And I was like, Don't take silence as acceptance. It's a moment of self-care, right? That breath is so important, to just let something be. As you said, I could see how that would be incredibly powerful for yourself,
Yeah.
just to
Oh,
be a gift. Yeah.
absolutely. And for a very long time, I say in the TEDx, I say, why did I not speak up in that moment when the bully demoted me in front of my team in the boardroom? Why did I not actually say anything? Now, I was quite, again, ashamed, and I blamed myself for not speaking up in that particular moment. And I questioned, was I able to speak up as a 12-year-old? And in that meeting, I just could not say anything. Now, it was partly that hyperventilation thing going on, and just like swallowing back the tears, just not showing that I'm actually crying so loud inside. Like I barely made it to the bathroom afterwards when I
Yeah.
cried my eyes out. And then I had that enough is enough moments. I think this also was also partly I knew by then, because it'd been going on for a long time, I knew by then that it wasn't safe for me to speak up. So I actually now feel very proud and content with the fact. And actually, I've only had this awareness now in this podcast. So thank you for that. Actually, I don't really blame and shame myself anymore, because I know in that moment that was actually the right thing to do. And I think I'm talking to also trusting ourselves more. And in that moment where you had that silence, people are uncomfortable with silences. Nothing, it would not have been wrong to just say, can I just have a moment? And just hold that silence. But because you didn't actually command that silence, it was silence, and it was because your energy was probably a little bit uncomfortable. They probably felt it and they wanted to move on. But imagine in that scenario, you can have that meeting over again and you can just say, can I just have a moment to think? How powerful is that? Hey?
Right. And to command your own needs, I think, is incredibly empowering as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just being really like authentic. And I really just need a moment to think. Just give me a moment to think.
And I think I'm wondering if that isn't why so many people step into an entrepreneurial space, because they can own their moments. I'm going to be controlling my own forward momentum to a certain extent, right? I'm going to be my own boss. So I wonder if that ownership isn't really a part of the entrepreneurial spirit.
I think it is, yeah. And I think it's, but you also put yourself in a place where you really have to go on that developmental journey as an entrepreneur. That's the scariest place that you'll ever step into, in terms of I'm not like naturally entrepreneurial. I have been using the words accidental entrepreneur in a part of me in a previous life. Just because I think I stepped away because I had that moment. I was on my knees. Enough was enough. I just could not do it anymore. I think it is possible. It is possible in a corporate setting to control more of those moments. I think there's unfortunately constructs in an organization which takes that power away, especially often, unfortunately, for women, just because of the way these organizations, these corporations were built by men for men. And the cultures there are very male dominating, very masculine. I come from that world, so I can talk to that. And it's so much about we as women now stepping out and giving ourselves permission to own those moments And that's what I'm so passionate about. And that's what I want to see more of. Yes, I stepped away because I wanted to have more control. I wanted to step back into my power, own those moments. I love what you're saying, own the moments. At the same time, I think it's also about permission for yourself, especially when there are other people and other dynamics involved, external factors that we cannot control.
Yeah. Do you see possibly a collection of habits or practices that you think women entrepreneurs should adopt to be able to sustain and have self-care while running a business?
Absolutely. I think the first one is 100% prioritize you on your list of priorities. Okay, start with you. That's not selfish, because if you thrive, everybody else thrives. Your kids, your husband, your partner, your team, everybody, your clients, everybody. So do not shy away from prioritizing that time for you. Okay. And then it's about well-being holistically. What are you doing for your physical, your mental, your spiritual, your emotional health, right? So find the things that matter to you, really almost remember what you loved as a child. And we can learn so much from my sister's got a little, almost 2-year-old, little Emma. And you watch her and you would just watch how present she is and how she just absolutely enjoys that moment. And she's just in the moment. And you're just like, oh, wow, that used to be us. We used to know exactly what we wanted. And I'm like, when did we unlearn that? When did we forgot to be so passionate, to be so present, to be so powerful in the moment, right? So it's very much about you really taking care of you, but practically taking care of you, like taking the steps, finding the best people to work with. I'm working with an amazing woman at the moment who's very much focused on my emotional resilience, because that is, if you want to do big things, you've got to take bold, brave moves, and you're going to need that resilience. Things are going to go pear-shaped. Things are not going to go the way that you want it to go. So how do you actually navigate those moments and still trust and believe that it's exactly working out the way it's supposed to work out? You've got to find that inner peace, that inner strength. So for me right now, that's all in my physical training and in my embodiment, in my breathing, in my stretching, and all the mobility work that I do with her. So really, that's major important.
Yeah.
So important. I can go on, but I think that's a really important one. I always talk about 3 mindsets, and this is particularly about your relationship with other people. So I want to just talk to that very briefly. So the first one is, I'm okay, you're okay. So this is really about the okay corral and having positive regard for yourself. First and foremost, you are enough. And then having positive regard for the other person, not making assumptions about them, even if it's a horrible person and you've got to have a difficult conversation with them and it's not going to be an easy conversation. Go into that conversation with a mindset of, I'm okay, you're okay. Okay. And then it's about being curious, not furious. And so the curious, not furious helps you to transform any conversation from a battle of messages, butting heads, to actually a learning conversation. We ask questions. We want to understand each other's perspectives. It's really important to have a learning conversation. And this concept I get from Crucial Conversations, How to Discuss What Matters Most. It's a very powerful book. I think it was originally commissioned by the Harvard Negotiation Project. And so it's a collaboration of different authors, but a beautiful, powerful book. And so go from a battle of messages to a learning conversation. Be curious, not furious. And then it's really about your ability to really think on your feet. Think on your feet. Think in that moment. It's about your situational awareness. So you mentioned a really powerful example about taking that pause. Can you just give me a moment to think? Or to really have that agility and adaptability to respond, not react, to respond to anything that anybody throws your way But for that to be for that to be possible, I think it's really important to have the preparation. So you've got to also think about your outcomes before you go into a meeting. What are my things that my non-negotiables, the things that I have to get out of this meeting?
Yeah.
And what am I prepared to let go? When am I actually going to step away from this conversation? That is important preparation. We cannot just go into these conversations hoping and praying for the best. We've got to be strategic in these conversations as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think that is so vital to have that forethought going in and being adaptable as it goes forward. Yeah. And you have such a unique niche for your consulting practice. We're talking about cybersecurity, we're talking about culture. And this conversation so far has just been so empowering into how I'm imagining how I might create a culture for myself as I'm moving forward, that kind of focus on my own power as I enter conversations. But how did cybersecurity mesh with that for you, for your Roar Consulting?
Yeah, so the cybersecurity part actually came long before the Roar Consulting came to life. So I was working as a change consultant, people and change consultant in one of the big accounting firms. So I actually started my life as a chartered accountant. I knew very early on that accounting and auditing was not my forte. It didn't light me up, so it wasn't my passion. But I also worked in an accounting firm, which gave me the opportunity to very early on in my career pivot into change, people and change consultancy. So learning and development, behavioral change, all the things that light me up. This is all about being in a classroom, training, teaching. I love it. I absolutely love it. And then about 13 years ago, cybersecurity became this big new buzzword. And the firm that I used to work at, they created a cybersecurity function. And so one of the leaders in the team approached me and he said, we need someone with your skill sets, people skill set, change skill set, behavioral change skill set, to come and work with us so that we can actually develop the people aspect of the proposition. So cybersecurity is not just a technology problem. It's not just a processes problem. It's actually fundamentally a people problem first and foremost.
Yes.
And so we know that the majority of cyber attacks happen through a human interaction, right? So 95+% of cyber attacks happen because a person has clicked on a dodgy link, has revealed their sensitive information, has been tricked into doing those things. And so, yeah, so that's really what came first in terms of dipping my toe into the cybersecurity world and learning this beautiful new language. It took probably 3 years to learn the language of cybersecurity because it's very technical. It's a different world, different people. It can be a very challenging environment to navigate because people aren't necessarily people's people. They are better at communicating with computers, right? So they love the zeros and the ones more than they love the people. And so it's a very fascinating environment to work in. And it just so happened that when I stepped away from my corporate career on my knees with no plan for my life, that cybersecurity behavioral change consulting was one of my very strong skill sets. And so I was able to build my consulting business around doing big contracts for big global organizations to help them embed secure mindsets and habits into their organizational cultures. And so that's what I still do to a large extent today.
That is amazing to me, the human-centered approach to that work, because that's not the immediate thing that comes to mind, as you brought up, not at
Yeah.
all. And I think we have such a disruption going on right now that and of course, I'm speaking about AI and how it's coming into so many aspects of business. How do you think your skills in dealing with the concept of change? This is a disruptive shift. How are you bringing those skills to the table right now for people?
Yeah, so I think it's really about it's resilience and adaptability. So I talk about it's not just about bouncing back; it's about bouncing beyond, and really knowing that going forwards, the change is just coming more. It's more prolific. It's faster. It continues to be faster and faster. So the adaptability aspect, the agility aspect of it is so super fundamentally important. And so to me, an approach around failure is not failure. Failure is feedback. I really passionately feel about that because actually we are going to make mistakes. We are going to fail. If you're learning, you're failing. But it's how do I change my relationship with failure so that it's actually not perceived as failure. It's perceived as, okay, what do I have to learn to do it better next time? And I think that's reframing the conversation that you're having with yourself and not being afraid to fail and to learn from those perceived failures. So that's a very key concept. And I think in the cybersecurity world, it's particularly pertinent. And I think it's particularly pertinent in learning about AI, because I think we are working on the basis of you are going to fail. It's not a case of if, it's a case of when, because anybody can fall victim to a cyber attack. You and I can have the best cybersecurity skills. We can be so cyber savvy, so aware, but on a bad day, we're busy, we're running around, we get an email, it looks legit. We have expected something like that. We click on the link and it can happen to us. So it's very important to have a mindset that's different to traditionally, where we're not afraid, we're too afraid to fail. It's really important, I think, to recognize that when something goes wrong, it's about speaking up quickly so that we can do something about it. That's certainly how it works in the cybersecurity world.
Yes. Yeah. And being, I think, comfortable enough with that is such a learning for all of us because we don't give ourselves permission to fail and have that feel safe. It's, I have to prove myself. I have to prove myself. I have to know what I'm doing. And we come into this oftentimes say, I have to know this. I have to know this. I have to have an expertise in this. But really, we were talking about this earlier. I don't think there's an expertise right now. I think there's only learning.
Absolutely. And AI is learning faster than all of us. It's like AI is the model for us in terms of learning and not being afraid to fail.
Yeah, yeah. And okay, so let's take the roar process and navigate through this feeling. So how might we tackle this?
Okay, so it's really about recognize. So let me take you through it. So you want to learn a new skill, right?
Mhm.
What is the immediate thought that comes up for you?
I feel like I need to already demonstrate some type of thoughtful conversation. I need to put this out. I need to be recognized as a thought leader. I need to put this forward so my clients can see it and want to engage with me.
Okay. So if you just for a moment lean into the sensation, right? So you can close your eyes and you can just so you've got this amazing opportunity with a new client. They're asking you this particular question to create this beautiful thing for them.
Mm.
What is the biggest sensation that comes up? What is the one line that comes up in terms of the fear, in terms of the limiting conversation?
What if they don't like what I produce?
What if they don't like what I produce? And so if you just sit with that feeling, you must have a charge. So what's the charge, like on a scale of 1 to 10?
Probably you're saying like how intensely I feel that?
Yeah.
Probably about an 8.
Okay. Okay. And so how do you, okay, what if they don't like what I'm producing? Okay. How do you now invite that and sit with that and allow it to actually be with you? What is the sort of the question that you can ask? What is a different question that you can ask? First of all, is it true?
Not necessarily. I think I might have a tendency to sit with that for a minute, recognize it, and then flip it into what can I learn by their feedback on what I give them?
Okay. And so what could be the more empowered feeling that you attach to that?
looking at every first step as a draft and collaboratively building something with them instead of having to be the expertise that comes to the room.
Beautiful. Okay. And so how are you asserting yourself now? So let's start it with what if. So you started, what if they're not going to like it? What is the new empowered what if?
I think I'm presenting the project as collaborative as opposed to me producing a deliverable. I'm facilitating a conversation, not producing a deliverable. I'm going to facilitate a collaborative conversation with you, and we're going to co-construct this
Co-create.
producible
Yeah.
item.
And that's the reframe, right? So the
Yeah.
reframe comes from actually what? Instantly, when you think about collaboratively producing it, co-creating it, it feels a lot more expansive.
Yeah.
And that's the emotional resilience. It's the expansive feeling that comes from actually, you know what? This is so exciting. What if they love it? I'm going to create this first concept and I'm going to present this. And actually, what? That's only the first step. That's only the first draft. And we're going to create this beautiful, co-create this beautiful solution together.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
My
works.
job is nothing more than to spark, right? My job is to
Oh,
spark.
I
And
love
then
it.
through the
Love it.
oxygen that we create together, we're making it bigger into the
Yeah.
full blown, you're on fire. Now you've got what you need to move forward. But it was a collaborative process. Yeah.
Yes.
And I thank you. You led me to it. But I think oftentimes when we come from, I'm going to come from an industry into entrepreneurial space. I'm going to come from corporate into an entrepreneurial space. A lot of times we were at the top of our game because of how many years I'd put into that, because of how many years of experience. I have felt like an expert for a while. And now I'm shifting into this brand new territory with this huge disruption going on around AI. And I'm used to what was over here, right? I'm used
Yeah.
to that level of experience that that I had, that I earned. I earned after all that blood, sweat, and tears. And now, for whatever reason, whether it was ripped away, whether I stepped away, I'm newborn again.
Yeah.
And we're all living through this disruption. So if we're bringing that mentality of my previous expertise, what I'm hearing you say is we're going to have to completely reframe that. And ROAR is a fantastic framework to stop beating ourselves up, allow us the gift of reframing.
Beautiful. I love that. And it's why I use the word compassion. So it's compassionate introspection, compassionate conversation with yourself, and then a courageous conversation with the outside world. But it is like not beating, I love what you're saying, not beating ourselves up so much.
Yes. And your book is literally ROAR: How to Tame the Bully Inside and Out. So
Yes.
you're addressing that beautifully. Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah. So the book really started because I was furious, so angry about the bullying, not necessarily because of me, but because every person that I spoke to had a similar story to share. And it was top executives in organizations. It wasn't just anybody. It was people who are at the top of their game, who are leading organizations. And almost everybody had a conversation with me about a similar experience. And so I think it really sparked me to talk about workplace bullying as today's silent epidemic. And like we just accept it as the way we do things around here. So I talk about what is workplace bullying, putting it into the context of narcissism, and also making narcissism something which it's a word that's thrown a lot around so much. It's lost its meaning. It's so easy to label someone as a narcissist. But at the end of the day, I use the narcissism spectrum scale, which was originally developed by Dr. Craig Malkin. And he basically talks to the fact that we're all narcissistic. It all happens on a spectrum, and we move up and down the spectrum many times a day. And it's just about being in the middle and consciously trying to keep yourself in that healthy narcissism space. obviously you've always got the outliers and the sociopaths and the bullies of the world. But actually, you know what? The majority of us, when we are bullies, we're accidental bullies, and we can change our behavior. We can course correct. So that's really important. And then I talk a little bit about the toxic trio. So my toxic trio is very much a bully cannot bully someone if they don't have a victim to bully, a target, and an organizational culture that actually supports or allows the bullying to happen. So really talking to the responsibility that organizations have to create psychologically safe cultures where people are not afraid to speak up. And then the sort of solution part of the book is the raw blueprint. It's the finding your purpose. It's the winning your inner game. It's the winning your outer game. And then it's about roaring. It's about communicating with impact and influence.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a fantastic book. I hugely recommend that people grab it and get ready because you're actually working on more, right? Are you not? Part two.
And it's one of those projects that I had to put on the ice this year. We've navigated big life changes. So in 2022, in the beginning of 2022, we decided that we want to move back from England to South Africa. So I'm back in South Africa now, hence the short sleeves because we're going into summer. And from the beginning of 2022, we've been navigating a big life change. So I've got 2 teenage sons who we had to reschool here in South Africa, South African schools. We actually lived in England 18 years, so it's been a long time. And both the boys were born there. I had to change or transition my business. My husband had to transition. He's still working for the company in the UK, so he's traveling with work a lot. But the beauty of this is I had this dream and I had this, again, allowing myself to feel and to really remember what I love. And I really just knew that South Africa was home and I wanted to be back in this environment and just be so connected to nature. I'm looking out because I've got the most beautiful views. Last year, we built our dream home and we moved in at the end of last year. So
Oh,
over the course of the
crazy.
last years, we've had so much going on. And so the book project is happening next year. So I'm committing now to publish by the end of next year.
Oh my goodness. I
Okay.
love it. You verbalized it. There's power in
Yes.
that.
I'm doing this for the first time. I'm doing it live. I've asked a woman, and it's so interesting. You talk about co-creating and collaborating. This woman is a very talented writer and she helps people self-publish their books in South Africa. And so I just said to her, Philippa, do you mind journeying with me next year? You don't have to write a word. I just need someone to co-create this work, someone who can hold me accountable, who can just journey with me. And I'll write it all. You can just review and give me feedback, all that sort of good stuff. But I had that conversation. And so I have committed and I said it out loud to her. So you're the
Nice.
second I'm saying this out loud too. So it's got to happen now.
I love it. I love it. And I think really what you're speaking to is something that I think it would benefit us all as a mother, as an author, as a coach, as a leader in this space. How do you maintain balance and resilience? What does that look like for you? How do you check in with yourself?
Yeah, it's a tough one for me. I think the reason I'm teaching this curriculum is because part of me up until now has been a very all or nothing, crash and burn. So I go absolutely full out. I get 200 miles an hour and then find myself in a place where I'm back in that burnout. And it happened as recently as the beginning of this year. After navigating the big move back to South Africa, building our dream home, moving into the house, I literally found myself in January feeling like nothing mattered. I was too tired to enjoy anything. I was back in that space of horribleness. And for me, this year has been very intentional. I have been very intentional about 3 things. So my 3 new power words are peaceful, present, powerful. And so I'm really leaning into peaceful. It doesn't have to feel like a hustle. It doesn't have to feel like hard work. And I've really challenged myself to say, every time I'm doing something and I'm not enjoying it, and it's not generating the peaceful feeling inside, I put it away. I stop.
Okay.
And so I'm getting into that habit, and it's so powerful. So it's really about leaning into being more present, being more in the moment, and actually really feeling how the thing that you're doing makes you feel. And if you're not enjoying it, if it doesn't bring peace, then ask yourself, why am I doing this in the first place? Because it's often the ego. It's often the, oh, I've got to prove something. It's the pressure. I've got to prove, I've got to pressure, I've got to be perfect. It's all these ego emotions, which doesn't feel very nice. So yeah, peaceful, present, powerful.
I love it. I love it. And on your podcast, you also explore some of these topics, that idea of well-being, overcoming blocks and limitations, and that emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
How can people connect with you on your podcast?
Oh, so my podcast is available. It's Roar, the podcast. It's on my website. My website is actually marilisdevilliers.com. And yeah, I'm also on LinkedIn. LinkedIn seems to be my main platform that I use. You can find me there as well. You can probably put the links as well.
100% going to.
I can
For
give you
sure.
the links, which makes it easy to find me.
Yeah, I think after hearing you in this conversation, people are going to want to connect because you are such a welcoming spirit. You really are.
Thanks. Oh, I love the work. And I think that's your message is always for yourself first. I so live and breathe my curriculum, and there's always more. And that's exactly what the new book is going to be about. We are meant for more, but there's always more. There's always a next level. But there's also what comes with that is you really embracing the fact that you're good enough already. You're more than enough already, that you don't have to prove anything to anybody. And so it's really for me about my mess becoming my message.
Ah, I love it.
And sharing it with the world. But that balance, the balance come from you're meant for more, you want more. We're human beings that desire more, but you are already enough. You're already more than enough. And so that's the beautiful dance that we've got to do with ourselves.
And I think there could not be a better message, that you are bringing to the table everything you need to get what it is that you most desire.
Yeah, love it. It's beautiful. Cheers.
It's exactly what I heard you say. Cheers right back to you. Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation.
My honor and my pleasure. It's so great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Empowered by AI. If today's episode sparked ideas, don't wait. Follow the link in the show notes to visit innovativeaistudio.com and download your free resource, created to help you put today's insights into practice. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes packed with more tips, tools, and inspiring stories. Until next time, stay empowered and keep innovating.